From both of you, just like a quick assessment on the season that just ended.
Anytime we're sitting here before you guys and not talking about a postseason series, it's a disappointment. We came into spring training believing we had a team that would compete for the playoffs and possibly extend our season deep into the playoffs, and that didn't happen. There are a number of reasons for that. We don't really have the luxury for bad breaks. We build this team without much margin for error, and in fact, we probably need some good breaks along the way for us to make it into the postseason. We didn't get those breaks this year. Certainly didn't have the type of health that we wanted on the club, and we fell short. But if you take a step back, and that's what we get to do in the immediate days after the season. You take a step back and reflect on what's taken place. There's a really good foundation going forward. There's great talent at the major league level. There's great talent at the minor league level, and we can project out the next couple of years clubs that have the talent and can compete. It's our job to mold those players into rosters that work for next year and for years beyond.
I agree with all of that. I think we've talked quite a bit over the last week. No, we did not get where we wanted to get and where we need to be. But backing kind of what Matt just said, we did experience a lot of things. Him and I both, our clubhouse, and we're going to be better for it going into next year. There's a lot of stuff to be really optimistic about, and at the top level, the major league level, our team, when you're talking about margin of error, these guys performed really well in some tight ball games. Could we have done some things better? Without a doubt. But I think we look at it from the experience that we gained this offseason is going to help us moving forward.
Tommy?
Matt, what do you see as your off-season priorities?
It's going to be another busy off-season. Certainly in terms of conversation, it's hard to predict whether that actually turns into actions and activity, but we'll be very busy talking. We have a number of positions where we have question marks. I think many clubs have similar question marks or similar number of question marks coming into the off-season. We have a number of players at the catcher position. That's going to be an active spot of competition and certainly conversation this off-season. Shortstop is another place where we have a number of players who are going to come into spring training competing, and we will be monitoring that market throughout the off-season. And then we have great depth at the pitching ranks, both at the major league and minor league level. That's how we build our team, with that pitching depth and pitching talent. It's a great luxury to have. At the same time, it's a way for us to improve other areas of our team in terms of conversations with other clubs. And so I imagine, like always, we're going to be active in dialogue and trying to figure out how to maximize all of our roster spots.
Kevin, on June 20th, you guys were 10 games over 500 in first place and then hit a rough patch. What did you learn about the guys in the clubhouse and about this team during the rough times this season?
A lot. It's easy to come to the ballpark every day and put forth the effort when everything's going well. We did hit a rough patch, and it spiraled, deeper than what we would have liked. I think learning from it, we've got to be able to nip those situations a little quicker. But we always fall back on the guys' effort level. And there were a ton of tight games in there, and they continue to show up every single day and play. So we just continue to praise the way the guys went about their business every day, even up until the last series of the year.
Could you address the possibility of any of the free agents returning or things of that nature?
Yeah, we will. We'll certainly have conversations with a couple of guys who are free agents and see how our team shakes out, how the market for those players shakes out. And they're certainly going to want to test the market and see what's out there, and we'll continue to stay in touch with them. At the same time, we're managing a payroll And so we have to fit those within those constraints. There aren't going to be any early decisions, I imagine, and the conversations will take place throughout the offseason.
Matt, based on what you had to go through last offseason, just getting the internal stuff of the organization set in place, how much, I don't want to use the word easier, but easier, I guess, will this offseason be when you're just dealing with conversations and trying to get the team better?
We have our group in place, and that's a great luxury this offseason. We have a great baseball operations department. We have Kevin and the coaches in place. That takes a significant load off and allows us to focus our energies on the club and on the offseason. It'll be more of a regular offseason for us this year than last. It allows us more time to plan, more time to start talking to teams early, and hopefully will result in a productive offseason. But we're going to keep busy. We always keep busy. It's just a matter of how we fill the time. And this year we get to fill the time looking outside of our organization more so than tending to the internal operations, which is what last offseason we spent a lot of time on.
Matt, just to follow up, Andrew, the previous regime usually was not publicly specific in what you were doing in terms of keeping things flexible, creative, even on the payroll. Do you view a similar type of approach where you're going to target your couple areas, or you're kind of taking a very wide canvas view?
We'll take the same wide canvas view that we have for the last decade. We're open to ideas. We'll engage in conversations with teams and see where it goes. We have 29 other partners who are looking to improve themselves, and there are ways sometimes that together we can both improve our clubs in those one-to-one conversations. Sometimes they involve 3, 4, 5 teams at the same time. So we'll take that wide approach. We have our priorities, but we're not going to close ourselves off to conversations that may end up helping us. That's been our philosophy from the beginning. Same thing with payroll. We have a rough estimate or a range of where we can spend. It certainly lags behind the major league average, but we know those constraints and we work within them and work within that range to put the best club on the field.
Just to follow up, Stu Sternberg had said about a month ago he thought probably at best the payroll would stay the same, but maybe not likely would go down. Do you have a feel for those constraints yet?
We're having those conversations now, looking ahead at the budget this year and also for future years. I looked this morning and the top 10 teams in baseball have an average payroll that's more than $100 million higher than ours. It's a big gap, and we recognize it, we know it, we work within our means, and we're going to have those conversations now about what we can spend over the next several years, given the circumstances that we're in and the expectations for generating revenue.
Kevin, I know that the season is just winding down, but I want to know if you've started the process of self-evaluation, and specifically, I know you got a lot of advice from managers that you've either worked for or knew about, and so just wanted to know what sort of advice stuck out to you as you went along this year.
Well, we've spent plenty of time. That's a great thing about this organization. We talk before games, after games, over in-game decisions, over player conversations. So that I don't think that self-evaluation ever really stops. That's been going on for quite some time. There's definitely things looking back that if we had to do over again, I'd be the first to say I would like to do this again, do it over again. But you continue to learn from it. But and you talking about other managers, there's a small group of people that you talk outside of the organization. You ask for their advice. You give them examples on how to handle different situations, and it gives you a better view going forward when those different issues arise. And so I'm sure we will sit down. We sat down at the All-Star break as a group, and in the next week or so we'll sit down and kind of go over some different or exact scenarios of how they played out during the season that we can all get better from, and obviously myself at the forefront of that.
Matt, seeing as how quickly your pitching situation changed this year with injuries, will that make you less likely to trade away some of that pitching depth?
Yeah, I don't have a strong feel for more likely or less likely. We recognize that we have pitching depth and, more importantly, pitching talent, and we recognize how precious that depth can be. We've seen it disappear quickly over the last couple of years, and so sometimes that depth is fleeting. At the same time, we don't have the luxury of being able to stockpile talent in different spots. We have to spread it across all the different positions and spots that we have on our roster. So that's the challenge. But we have the luxury of knowing that we have that depth and we have those numbers. And it was great to see Matt Moore come back in the last month of the season, show that he's back. It was great to see Drew Smiley come back from his injury and show us that he can be a front of the rotation starter like we expected coming into the season. Those are some really good news that we have to look ahead into the off season and give us a lot of momentum going into the off season.
Matt, kind of following up on that, you got to see the last few weeks what this team looked like with Drew, with Matt, with guys like Mikey Motzwick and Richie Schaefer. Sort of how do you balance like what could have been as opposed to like we still need to make improvements to close the gap with some of these other teams?
Yeah, we try not to dwell on what could have been. We do a little bit. I mean, we're human. And we win one game a month more than we did, and we're having a very different press conference right now. So that shows how close we were, despite the injuries and the roller coaster of the season. There were some really good stories that came out of the last part of the year. You mentioned Richie, you mentioned Mikey. We talked about the pitching staff. It just gives us more optimism going into next year. And as I said, the talent level on this club and in the organization is higher than it was last year, higher than I think it's been in the last decade. We have a top 10 farm system. We have a lot of young players at the major league level who have great upside. And we're going to need some of those upsides to hit for this club to reach the postseason next year and years to come. But that's the good thing about young players. There is that opportunity for them to keep getting better and for them to become even more valuable in the roles that they play.
Kevin, maybe you first, and then Matt. You guys are only +2 in run differential this year. Where do you see the need to kind of work to improve that margin? I mean, both ways, or more so one way or the other?
I think offensively, what we showed the last 2 months, we've talked about it in the past or over the last week, that if that can carry over and we can kind of come out of the gate next year with that approach, a lot of that stuff will work itself out. We had some really good production from coming into the season from unlikely sources. And overall, just the change in the approach that Derek Shelton, Jamie Nelson, our front office, and our players bought into, if we're able to maintain that, a lot of those, I think we're going to see the benefit of more runs coming across, and that'll help. As far as a pitching standpoint, I think that looking back, we're not making excuses, but if you look at what took place with the injuries, the guys we didn't have, those guys did a tremendous job on that side of the ball.
Yeah, you're focused on the right part. It's the margin, and we need that margin to be greater next year to win more games. We need to score more runs, but not at the cost of sacrificing our defense. I think given the pitching that we have, we're going to be in a lot of tight ball games next year. Just by the nature of our pitching and defense, we are not going to give up that many runs, and so the challenge is finding ways to score more runs. If we had hit better with runners in scoring position, it would be a very different conversation. We'd have a bigger margin. We'd have won more games, and we wouldn't be having this press conference today. And so that's a key focus. And Kevin has alluded to it last week or so. We got to get better at some of the small things. Driving in runners in scoring position. We have to be better on the base paths. We have to make sure we're not giving up those easy outs. If we do that and we still pitch and we feel like we can, we're going to be a good ball club.
Any other questions? Steve?
For Kevin, but also I'd be interested in hearing Matt address this. Challenges notwithstanding, was this personally as well as professionally your career-wise most satisfying year, most fun year? How'd you like your new job?
I love my job. I love the people that I get to work with every day, coaching staff, players, front office. we have a tremendous group here. I don't know if you can call it satisfying because we didn't get where we needed to get or where we thought we were capable of getting. But the foundation that was set by our players and our coaching staff, we're definitely headed in the right direction. So, no, it wouldn't be the most satisfying, but to answer you, we did have a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun, and when you win games, it's fun. When you don't, it's not fun. So we want to have more fun next year.
Yeah, for me, I just have a greater appreciation for our baseball operations department, the talent, the curiosity that we have in the department, and I got to see it from a different vantage point and appreciate it more. It's a great group of men and women to work with. We have a great clubhouse culture, and that's what makes the job fun. We didn't make it to the postseason, so it's not as much fun as it could have been, but there's a lot of optimism within our organization because of the foundation that we built here.
Matt, you guys talked about the offensive philosophy, and I'm sure you'll have a lot more data to look at for a full feeling, but what is your initial reaction to the pitching philosophy that you employed as far as...
I thought we were going to avoid that one.
No. I wanted to save it for the end. Just, your initial thoughts. Did it work? Did it not work? As far as how you manage the starters and the starter to bullpen relationship?
We've learned a lot this year as a group, and the circumstances changed on us given all the injuries that we had, and certainly the bullpen as we had it constituted at the beginning of the season didn't fit what we needed once we had the injuries and we didn't have the same starter depth. And so we learned on the job, and we learned a lot from the players too as to how they adapt to roles, their philosophies, and how we can make it easier for them and also understand their sensitivities even more. So that's a conversation that's been going on throughout the year. We don't talk about it to you all very much, but we certainly talk about it a lot behind closed doors, and we'll continue that this offseason to make sure that we're in better shape next year.
So do you feel it worked though this season or not, or you don't know?
Yeah, we'll look into it. I feel like we did our best to maximize the personnel that we had, given the injuries, given the uncertainties. We had some really tough circumstances, and we had some games that played out very interesting ways, and we learned a lot from it. The thing I take away from it is that the dialogue in the clubhouse is very healthy. I'll speak for Kevin. He has more conversations with players than I've ever seen before between a coach and players. He makes sure he understands where they're coming from. He does a great job of explaining to them some of the philosophies, and he creates that team environment. We're not always going to agree, and there's certainly going to be disagreements amongst the players, coaches, front office, but if we're talking, we're doing our job, and we'll continue those conversations.
Just to add on that, and I respect that it's a completely hot topic, I think you look back at where we were in spring training, injuries occurred. The three starting pitchers that kind of got thrust into that role, we could all make this case that they had very successful years for young pitchers. So I think throughout communication, we maximized Nate Carnes, Erasmo Ramirez, Colomé, and then also, Matt Andrees, the guys that came up and spot started. A lot of people have questioned the bullpen at the end of the year. And I think we as an organization we're doing everything we can to win games right then. Our bullpen was not exaggerated with use by anything different in the past. It was simply, like we talk about the margin of the games. We play a lot of tight ball games. We're going to be better for that, better positioned, better conditioned, all of that next year. But looking back on how we won a lot of games because of those three young starters and what they provided for us.
You were 40-30 at the end of June, and certainly in good shape in terms of the division race and everything. It was all bunched up, but after that, things weren't the same. Thinking back to that point, could any of the slide have been anticipated, or could you have changed something, or did you see something at that time that wasn't going to go as well?
Matt or myself?
Either one.
Well, go ahead. All right. When we were 40-30, we were the beneficiary of some good luck. We were certainly playing well, but I don't think we were as good as that record indicated. And that it was great. It was great to be in that spot. I actually think we played better the rest of the year, and that it just didn't translate into wins. I'm not making excuses. We lost a lot of close ball games and lost a lot of those games that could have gone either way. But the performance of the club, the second half of the year, was very encouraging. It didn't translate into wins, but it's encouraging as we head into the offseason and think about this club and its makeup next year.
Hey guys, this question for both of you. During the year, instant replay was a very difficult time. Early in the year, mid-season, end of the year was very difficult. Every year it gets tweaked at the winter meetings. Do you guys anticipate any nuances to the rules being changed, and how do you feel it could be changed?
I have no idea if they're going to change the rules, but I do agree it is difficult, and ultimately I'm the one who's responsible. There's a lot of people that are looking at video, but it comes down to, do we want to challenge it or not? And I'm the person making that call, so I've got to get better at that. As far as the rules of replay, I think it worked for us at times. It worked against us at times also. I think we all need to kind of go back to the drawing board on the tag plays. Those have, in my opinion, gotten a little carried away to where the guy's clearly safe, a glove's being held on it, and somebody's getting their shin guard off, and it comes off the bag. That's not why replay's here. There's still a lot of uncertainty about blocking of the plate from the catcher. That's something that will be discussed. But I will say Major League Baseball has done a really good job over the last month of the year of communicating with teams. We met with some of the officials in Baltimore, and they are very aware of everything that our concerns, our thoughts, and they're going to take that. And then as a group, I'm sure this offseason, they tweak quite a bit. So I think they have a lot of information from a lot of different clubs to continue to get it better.
Yeah, I agree with a lot what Kevin said. Second base, plays at second base, neighborhood plays, something that is a constant topic of conversation amongst clubs. And there's some uncertainty about the standards of what is clear and convincing to overturn. And I think a lot of clubs struggle with that as we do. I would hope that when a play is challenged, that we can predict with 90% plus accuracy if it's going to be upheld or overturned. But it hasn't been that way. And to me, it's much more of a coin flip when something gets challenged. And so that's a conversation to have with Major League Baseball, so that we at least have an understanding and expectation for how it's going to be used and what the standard is to change calls and to overturn the calls.
Any other questions? Okay.